To make a cello, you have to start first with the mold. The mold on a cello consists of 3 parts. This is the middle part of the mold. This has to be done according to the plan, with the drawing first the outline with the special measurements, and then I cut this plywood, which is 3/4 inch thick. Then we screw these right angle metal portions. These are going to hold the blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Then we put spacers to keep the 2 outer portions of the frame at the appropriate distance. So the combined thickness of the entire frame achieves the depth or the width of the rib, which is 12 centimeters. In this particular case, these spacers are 3 centimeters high. I made a hole in the middle, so we'll accept a bolt that will fix the 3 parts together. These holes are not done at the beginning. These are done later on, after all the parts are bolted together. After the middle portion of the mold has been completed, then we need 2 sections for the outer portions. This is the top plate of the mold, and then we need another one just like this for the bottom. This is oak. The thickness here is 1.9 centimeters. I cut the perimeter, and it's very difficult to find a piece of wood that is this wide, so there's a glue line here that glues the 2 or 3 boards together. You might need 3 boards to achieve this width, and I have a glue line here and another glue line here. And then you cut it, and when you have then 2 exactly the same as this one, in order to make a copy the same, you make holes in the corners here, and then put a bolt through it, and then you outline the other plate the same as this one. The bottom plate, and we need the 5-inch bolt that goes in the corner hole. Then this goes down. Then the middle frame, the middle section of the of the mold goes in. After this is together, then we put in the top plate for the mold. Now I have made some extra forms that will help to help me guide the corner blocks and the C-bouts. This match pretty accurately the shape of the corner blocks here. I can remove them very easily, and gives me a guideline to how to shape the corner blocks better. And this is fixed with the regular nuts on all these 5-inch bolts. Now the entire mold is together. There is room here for the top, for the block at the neck. These are the corner blocks area here, and the bottom. Now, to make life easier, to be able to work better, I have made these rods that will go into these holes, and I have made 4 of them, which is inserted into a larger one. I cuff, made a hole about 1.5 inches, and I glue this inside here. This gives me a ring or a base which will hold the mold up above the level of the table, so allows the person to work above as well as below the mold without inconvenience. So insert these 4 rods and then we can put the entire mold down, which allows the person to work underneath just as well as above. Note that this is the area of the corner block. This has to be absolutely even when it's set up and completed, and then the corner block will be fixed to this area of the mold by 2 screws where we see the hole over here. The screw will hold the corner block from inside until the ribs are glued together. Then of course the screw will be removed. The number of holes, which are 1 1/4 inch in diameter, depends on the desire of each maker. I have tried to make a sequence of holes in the middle of the pattern and several in different areas to give me the radius of angle of the traction where we can put a clamp to best exert traction to fix and hold the rib in position. So these holes will accept any C-clamp that could be used for holding the pieces together. As another option, you can make the hole and you can insert this 1 1/4 inch rods, which will allow you to, if you prefer, instead of using the C-clamp, you can tie the outside mold to hold the ribs in place during the period of adjustment and gluing. Now, these holes that go through and through to the other side only go through in the middle section of the frame. The side holes over here do not go through the middle frame. So these are the only ones that go through the 3 parts of the frame. To help keep the ribs right in contact with the corner blocks, I have made these pressure pieces that will match the contour of the corner block, and then I put a hook, a screw hook into each one, and then this will push the rib against the corner block, and then this can be fastened, even tied to one of these poles, or a C-clamp can be placed over here to hold it tight in position. Obviously we need 2 of these for each corner block. So you need 2, 4, 6, 8. It would be wise to label them so you know exactly which one goes where. This is A and A goes here. This is number 1 and 1 is for here. Also, to help keep the rib in better contact with the outer frame, when the gluing time comes, I have made this extra pattern. The outside of the pattern matches as close as you can this curvature over here. I left a good section over 1.5 inches to provide mass so you can exert pressure here to pull it against the frame. And I have kept a little spacer here which is 8 centimeters long to maintain the distance. The distance from one end to the other is 12 centimeters, which is the thickness of the rib, 12 centimeters from this surface to this surface, which is going to be the thickness, the width of the rib. And then I have placed a rope which will allow me to tie this around the other side. This is optional. I think it will help when the gluing of the rib comes to keep it in perfect contact with the outline of the mold. We need to make a block that will fit here also, that will fill in the space between the end of these two areas to push the rib against the top block at the gluing time. Same thing for the lower end. And that pretty much takes care of the mold. When we become concerned with the plates, the top and the back, you must select the best wood that you have available. Then the first thing is to make sure that this surface is plain and flat, it is not wavy. Then we had to square this area, this corner, this surface over here, square to this area, make it perfectly straight. And this being then the bottom, we go down. The other half of the board, we've had the same procedure. This has to be flat, this has to be squared and even, and it has to match the other side. And when you get the two sides matching pretty evenly, pretty good, then you're ready to glue these two parts together. Because the wood generally is larger than you need, it's good to make a little notch here which allows you to put a clamp over this area and have a better purchase because the wood is here is wider, it is fatter. So you can put a better clamp over here. When you glue this area together, it's very important to match as close as possible these two edges. After the surfaces are smooth and planed and they match, put the glue on both surfaces, and I wait about a half an hour to let some of the glue penetrate the wood and begin to set before I put this together, which I already have done here. Now it's time to put the two pieces together and let the glue set. In putting this together, I have to be sure that the area remains flat over these boards or over an entirely flat surface. Then we can use the shortest clamp for this area, and then we use the longer clamps for the upper and the lower bouts. First are applied gently. Now we have to make sure that the board is flat in contact with the base board, otherwise it could buckle up. So we cannot allow that to happen. One way of preventing this buckling is to place the board across here on top. and then hold this together with clamps. Now is the pieces are in the process of gluing. They're put together. First started with the flat surface. These two boards will hold the pieces even, and we have clamps that hold the board down on the control here to prevent buckling. These two are here, and this board across also prevents from the middle area joint from buckling up. And also we have the three main clamps that squeeze the two boards together, the two halves together, two halves together right there. And over here there's another clamp to hold the two pieces down flat in contact with the base block. And now all of this has to dry before it's moved in any way. It is advisable to let it dry overnight for complete setting of the glue. This is a board that has been glued together. This is the back. And when you're done, the line should show very, very, very small hairline in the middle, the glue joint. If you have a wide gluing line, probably the two plates were not matching adequately. This is a very acceptable, very good match in here. You see the line barely shows up, all the way up and down the board. So this is the back plate of this cello. The top now is been drying up, is in the clamps, and this was glued yesterday. On the other side, we see again the glue line that the two plates match very adequately. So this plate is ready to work on now to cut the outline and continue with the working of the plates. When you work on the ribs come a little bit over 12 centimeters, perhaps 13 and a half. This is already finished, this side. The back is not finished. And you had to plane this down to 1.6 millimeters. This has not been planed yet. This is pretty much finished. So we had to work on the ribs, bring it down, and then cut the pieces before they are bent on the hot iron. There are 3 of these pieces for each instrument. I have 2 here, another one is over on the bench. The 2 have been thinned down. This one has to be thinned out. This is obviously the mold with the ribs mounted on. This is the top corner block. These are the upper bouts, corner blocks. Then we have the lower bouts, corner blocks, and the bottom, the end block. The ribs have been bent and are mounted on the frame, on the mold, and they are held in position by the opposite outside molding, and obviously by clamps. The clamps and the parts of the mold are all kept together with clamps, C-clamps, as well as other smaller clamps which can be tightened as needed. Note that the end of the corner blocks, it shows the way the C-bout portion of the rib ends into the portion of the rib that comes from the upper bout, which at the side of the joint it extends beyond the C-bout rib, and this will be later cut and adjusted. And the same happens at the other area, the other end. The C-bout rib stops at the exact location of the corner, whereas the main lower bout portion of the rib continues and extends beyond the junction of the two portions of the rib. So the actual apex of the corner will be established by the rib coming from the main bout. The free edge will be that portion of the rib that comes from the upper bout on the upper corner and from the lower bout on the lower corner. Here we can see the side of the ribs, the upper bout, the middle bout over here, and the lower bout on this side. These pieces of wood are very useful to maintain a firm contact of the rib in each portion of its curve, and each end of these pieces of wood contain a clamp or a hook, which then can be used to tighten this wood by a rope or a C-clamp to exert the pressure on the rib. So these are very useful and very tight, and their curvature matches quite exactly the curvature of that portion of the corner that will secure the curvature of the rib on that area. So we need the 1, 2, 3, 4, we need 8 of these corner pieces. Here we see the mold when the clamps have been removed. The ribs are now in full view. Of course, the ribs are now much wider than the final measurement of 12 centimeters. They had to be trimmed both at the upper edge as well as at the lower edge. For the purpose of better orientation, we remove the bottom plate of the mold, and we see the inner part of the mold with the linings glued on, which are now in the process of drying. The linings is willow, segments for the C-bouts, and segments for the upper bouts, one on each side. This wood is bent after being heated up and soaked in water for half an hour. The width is 1.5 centimeters, and the thickness of this lining is 3 millimeters. So all the linings are applied and glued in with some recess insertion in each block to secure firm contact. This is the mid section of the mold which is in place, and this holds the corner blocks by means of two screws on each corner block. The neck block has 4 screws, and the rib block is secured to the mold block by 4 drops of glue, one in each corner of this block. So there's 1 drop of glue here, 1 here, and 1 on each side at the other end of the block. That should be sufficient to hold the block in place without displacement. Later on, should be easy to remove this drop of glue that just holds up in the angles, in the corners of the frame, of the mold. The upper part of the mold still remains, and it's at the bottom. We see at the bottom over here. It is important to match these lines on the outside mold, which were made earlier, with the edges of the block. This line also matching the edge of the block. These lines were made at the beginning when these outside blocks, molding ribs blocks, were done, because displacement of this piece too low or too high will distort the curvature of the upper bouts, and likewise on the lower bouts the same thing. As we can see, there is a groove here which I decided to make. It's very commonly made on violin making. This will allow to put clips like a clothespin, something similar, to hold the lining in contact with the rib. Because of the curvature of the lining, I found it best to use the C-clamps on this side, even though I had placed clothespins on the lower bout on this particular ridge. The corners are glued thoroughly and dried up. Then we remove all the clamps, and then it's time to put the lining on. This, we already have the lining in place. Before putting the linings, you had to flatten the bottom part of the ribs, even out the corner blocks, and make the whole bottom straight. After that is done, then we cut the proper linings and bend them in the hot iron and then glue them on. There is a lot of advancement of the lining into the corner block in each area, and after this has been inserted, then we measure the 12 centimeters height, and then we trim the other side of the ribs, and when this is then trimmed, then we insert the lining on the top side. Next thing to do is to work on the corner blocks and on the outside of the ribs to shape the corner to the proper angle. Make sure they are vertical and a 90-degree angle with the plane of the two tables. So this corner, the end of the corner has to be squared away, has to be trimmed to size, and given the proper curvature here. It's good to have symmetry. The distance of the corner has to be the same to the middle of the base as the opposite one. That's a good way to measure, to make sure that the distance are the same here, and obviously this one should be the same distance as this one to the midline point over here. So after these are then rounded out, then this can be sanded to a 320 sandpaper. The middle of the frame is still attached to the corner blocks by these screws, and the block will be trimmed at the end. After this has been accomplished, then I can finish the inside of the lining, removing the edge, and this has to be taken off the mold and sanded smooth on the inside of the rib area. And at this point we begin to work on the plates. This is the top, and we had the back plate all glued up together and ready to trim, to cut. So in order to prevent displacement of the midline here, which is very easily done, I have placed a clamp at each end to maintain the block in perfect alignment with the midline of the mold, so it doesn't move right or left. This is important when we outline the rib side onto the plate. So then we place the plate on the table, and we outline the perimeter of the plate following the rib outline. So we put the plate block there, or better yet, I will use we take the block of the plate and put it down. We had to match exactly the midline here with the midline of the plate at the top and the bottom. Top and the bottom.